Hello everyone, welcome back to Shadow Whisper. Tonight we bring you 6 deeply disturbing true desert trucker stories from the Mojave. Sonoran, Chihuahuan, and Great Basin routes, the loneliest miles where heat shimmers. Radios die and headlights touch nothing but dust. These are not fictional tales, but accounts compiled from driver statements, dispatch logs, and incidents corroborated within the trucking community. From organized hijack crews using sandstorms as cover to radio-silent convoys that pass through fences like smoke, each case reminds us that America's deserts hide more than sun and sky. If you value authentic, documented horror from the road, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our investigations. After you listen, tell us what you've seen on I-10, I-8, US 93, or the 395. Settle in. The desert keeps its own kind of darkness. My name is Ramon Ortiz, 22 years pulling a box through sun and silence, most of it on I-10 between El Paso and San Antonio. I run a 2019 Peterbilt 579 with a 53-foot dry van. Nothing fancy, but clean enough that the scale guys nod when I roll past 30 under and the brakes don't squeal. I know this country the way a rancher knows fences, where the asphalt ripples in heat, where Border Patrol parks in the mesquite, where the wind will punch your trailer broadside without warning. The bulletin that week from TXDPS was short. Reports of improvised traffic control devices during dust events. The kind of phrasing that sounds bureaucratic until you picture it. A fake aero board, a couple of cones, a reflective vest bought off the internet, and a driver willing to gamble with your hurry. I filed it under rumor, the way we do with stories that feel true enough to be dangerous but still live on the other guy's channel. That night I was eastbound out of Van Horn, grossing just under $78,000 with paper goods headed for a morning drop in San Antonio. Forecast called for patchy dust after midnight, nothing I hadn't eaten before. But dust has moods the forecasters don't. 10 miles shy of mile marker 152, the sky lost its stars and the west wind climbed the ladder. Sand started moving low and fast like beige water. Then the road narrowed to a tunnel inside a storm, and the storm was all there was. I backed it down to 25, 4 ways on. Left steer kissing the fog line so the white could live in my mirror. Visibility was 50 feet on a prayer. CB went from chatter to coughs to the tight sound radios make when the air gets bullied by weather. My wipers chattered dry. The heater blew grit hot through the vents. Every bump felt like a shoulder, every shadow like another truck. That's when I saw it. An aero board materializing in the wash of sand like a ship. Amber chevrons pumping right. Detour. Accident ahead. 2 orange cones skittered past my steer like they'd been set and then kicked by a wind devil. Off to the shoulder sat a white Tahoe with a magnetic visor light laid crooked on the dash. Hood popped. A man in a reflective vest waving with the kind of urgency that makes your foot move before your brain does. I keyed up out of habit. Eastbound I-10 at 152, anybody got eyes on a detour? Static. Then a dry West Texas voice. Negative closure posted, driver. Hold lane if you can hold it. The vest man stepped into my beam, swinging a flashlight like he could write orders on my windshield. He pointed hard to the ramp. Behind him, through the grit, I could make out a flat shape crouched behind the arrow trailer. Could have been a lowboy, could have been a lie. The wind shoved the Peterbilt and I tasted dust in my teeth. Every part of me wanted the frontage road. Clearer air, space to breathe, and the sign said accident like a hand on your shoulder. But there was no odor of oil. No signature flicker of real emergency units, no cone line that made sense. I crept past the nose of the Tahoe and watched the vest man track me with his light. In my mirrors, the sand thinned just enough to sketch 3 silhouettes stepping from behind the aero board. One carried chain looped over a shoulder. One wore a cap with the wrong brim. The third kept low, like his job started after a door opened. I hit the panic macro on my ELD with one finger and kept rolling. 10 seconds later, the aero board twitched sideways like someone kicked a leg. The Tahoe's hood dropped. The light bar went dark. The fake detour folded itself like a carnival trick, fast as thieves who'd practiced under better weather. I breathed when the wind let me. Sand fell out of the beams like rain. I held 30 and listened to the radio's stomach settle. When a trooper finally answered my distress ping, his voice came calm and tired like mine. You're the 3rd on that tonight. Do not exit for any non-uniformed personnel. Units en route. I've hauled through whiteouts of snow in Wyoming, fog in the San Joaquin and rain that tried to drown I-35. But sand feels personal. It gets inside the cab in your head and makes you want shorter roads and easier choices. That's when a false arrow looks most like the truth. I didn't take the ramp. I took the lesson. The storm let me have 30 feet of world at a time. That was enough to keep the left steer on paint and my right mirror full of ghosts. The arrow board disappeared behind sand the way starlight does, quick and embarrassed. I wanted a way station. A truck stop with ugly lights and other rigs' taillights to follow. Instead, I got nothing followed by more nothing, which is how West Texas says good evening. 5 minutes later, a pair of headlights slid into my mirror. Low, close, and steady. Not a big truck. SUV height. Another set joined, offset to the left. The storm made halos around them like saints with bad intentions. They matched my speed at 27, then 28, holding a polite 5-car gap that never wavered even when the wind did. In weather like that, most drivers pass or fall back. Shadowing is a verb you use on purpose. I tried the CB again. 2 vehicles pacing me eastbound 150 to 152. Storm conditions, request trooper ETA. The trooper came back clipped. Units 3 out, keep lane. Do not stop. Copy. I didn't plan to. The right side vehicle nosed closer, then drifted toward the shoulder like he was about to overshoot in the wind. Reflex says give him space. I nudged left barely. Immediately the left vehicle tightened his offset, closing my out. Classic box-in. Right car feints, you move left, left car pins, rear car pushes. If you brake hard, right car kisses your trailer. Left slides to block your lane, rear seals the deal. They don't need your whole rig. They need your door, the dust pulsed. For one breath, the air went thin and the world stretched. Through that seam, I saw enough. Tahoe shape and backed, white like our friend at the ramp. Up front on the left, a gray Tacoma with no plate. On the right, a beat half-ton ride heighted for desert work. I couldn't lift the radio without lifting my heart. There's a second panic button hidden under my shifter boot. I built it after a friend got clipped in Lordsburg, and nobody heard him until the thieves heard him stop breathing. I pressed it. Somewhere in a server, my truck's dot moved from green to red, and dispatch, DPS, and my wife's if anything ever happens contact got a breadcrumb. Sometimes paranoia is just a skill with ugly shoes. Rear car flashed high beams twice. Signal. Right car drifted out again. Left car mirrored me so close I watched sand walk his hood. This is where fear tries to do the driving. I let professionalism keep its hands on the wheel. The Peterbilt had power the box crew didn't know about. A mild tune for hills, nothing wild. Enough to make 80,000 feel like 70 when wind stacked against me. I dropped to manual, picked a gear the engine liked and counted to 3. On 3 I buried the throttle and let Torquey decide the next sentence. The truck surged. The right car lost nerve first, headlights skittering in the dust. The left tried to hold, but he wasn't willing to trade his fender for my steps. The rear car accelerated hard to close the pocket, then got confused when the pocket wasn't where the plan said. 30 became 45 and the storm's fist got smaller. The Peterbilt's nose ate sand and wrote a tunnel for itself. The rest area at MM156 loomed like a bad choice. If I took it, I'd hand them a controlled space with no witnesses. If I stayed on the interstate, I kept my 2 lanes, my shoulder, and the chance of a marked unit popping out of the dust like a lighthouse with a ticket book. I stayed married to the white line and the idea of the next mile. 2 blue flickers cut the storm ahead. Then the kind of light that turns sand to rain. DPS light bar punching through from the median. The cars behind me made a decision in unison. Disappear. The Tahoe's beams went dark. The left car slid off the gas so quick his nose dipped. The right car vanished into shoulder scrub like he'd been reclaimed. I exhaled in a voice I didn't recognize. The trooper set a rolling block a quarter mile ahead and called my dot by plate. Driver, keep speed. Do not exit. 2 units behind you. In my mirrors, red and blue bubbled out of sand like something alive. It's strange what feels safe when you've been scared, right? A stranger with authority. A storm that's still a storm but not yours anymore. We ran that way to Fort Stockton, lights floating in grit, the world the size of a gymnasium. When I finally parked under ugly sodium lamps, I could taste metal in my mouth, and nothing in my thermos tasted like coffee. I slept like men sleep when they've nearly lost more than cargo. The report took an hour, which is fast when your hands still hum. The trooper was what you want them to be at 030 steady, unamused, and too tired to pretend. He showed me photos on his phone from 2 nights prior. A rental Aero trailer, recovered behind an abandoned farmhouse, a pile of reflective vests in a tote, a magnetic visor light with Amazon tape still clinging to it. They pop up after haboobs, he said. Fold and roll when we get near. By the time we find one setup, the next is upwind. He told me the part that made my jaw grind. A driver had taken a detour at MM 138 during a dust wall 3 days earlier. They didn't steal his load. They stole him long enough to pull the cab, pull the dash cam, pull the ELD tablet, and dump him with a concussion and his keys missing. The Peterbilt turned up later, stripped of stainless tools, and the ECM sold, piece by piece, to trucks that didn't ask where shine came from. You hear those stories and think that happens to other guys. I was another guy until I wasn't. That's how quick a line draws itself in sand. Back in San Antonio, the consignees signed for paper that didn't know it had been argued over by men who take what isn't theirs. Dispatch flagged my panic pings and called to put concern in a voice that usually only has freight in it. My wife didn't say I told you to stop running night desert because she loves me, and because the thing you really want to say to a person who almost didn't come home has too many words. I changed a few habits. None of them make me braver. They make me old in the right ways. I don't exit for anything that isn't marked and lit like statute says. No private SUVs with dash lights. No men in vests standing alone with a flashlight that writes commands instead of directions. If DPS needs me, they can own the center line and announce. I keep my doors locked anytime the wheels stop. My ELD panic and hardline both live where my left hand rests without thinking. When dust turns the world to a room and somebody offers a door, I ask who built the house. The desert doesn't hate you. It doesn't love you either. It's a blank page where men write the stories they brought with them. Some bring water and patience. Some bring arrows they made themselves. The wind will erase their handwriting eventually. In the minutes before it does, you have to decide if your name belongs on the same line. I still run I-10 nights for the quiet and the miles. When sand starts moving like a tide, I slow down and listen for the man on the radio who sounds like he's sat more nights than I have. Sometimes the radio is empty and the only voice left is yours. That's when you find out whether you're driving the truck or the storm is. If you've never seen an arrow board appear out of dust, I hope you never do. If you have, you know. The part I can't teach you. How to let fear be information instead of fuel. That's the whole job out here when you strip the chrome off it. See the lie, hold lane, live to tell. Trust is a luxury truckers can no longer afford in a sandstorm. The wind asks for your eyes. The thieves ask for your choices. Only one of them deserves an answer. My name's Tanya Reed. I haul pharma out of Nogales up to Phoenix, reefer unit loads that have to sit between 33 and 36 degrees no matter what the desert's doing outside. 20 years behind the wheel, mostly nights. You learn to trust 2 things out here, your gauge needles and your instincts. Everything else, including the voices you think you hear, can lie. That night in late June 2021, the Sonoran was sitting on a heat index of 118 degrees. The asphalt shimmered like water. The air between Gila Bend and Ajo is the loneliest 70 miles in Arizona. No gas, no service. Just blue call boxes nailed to posts every mile or two. Old state hardware half the time dead, half the time echoing their own static. I'd left Yuma Reefer Services around midnight. 38,000 pounds of insulin behind me. Diesel full, coffee flat. CB was humming with the usual chatter. Weather, brake checks, somebody telling a joke that's older than the highway. Then, right past mile marker 42, everything went quiet. Not faded, cut. Like somebody had pulled the plug on the world. For a minute, it was peaceful. Then my truck's Bluetooth made the sound it does when it connects to a phone. Except my phone was buried in the console. A child's voice came through the speakers. Help me. Thin, breathy, almost drowned by wind, my hand froze halfway to the volume knob. Before I could move, there were 3 soft knocks from the back wall of the sleeper. No, from the reefer bulkhead. I eased onto the shoulder, hazards clicking like a heartbeat. The desert swallowed the light 5 feet out. The temperature outside read 104 degrees at 2:12 a.m. I told myself it was compressor noise, metal flexing. But the knocks came again. When I stepped down, the air felt thick enough to chew. The smell was all creosote and hot pennies. The sky had that bleached-out milk color that means dawn's nowhere close. Hello? My voice went thin. "Anyone back there?" Nothing answered except the hum of the reefer. I walked the length of the trailer, boots sliding on grit, flashlight cutting cones through dust. The seal was intact, the lock straight. The knocking stopped. Then the call box across the ditch lit up. A tiny amber bulb blinked once and the same child's voice whispered through its speaker, louder now. "Please help me. I'm hurt." Every instinct I have, the same ones that keep kids from freezing in trucks and drivers from cooking in cabs, told me to go to that box. But something in the tone was wrong. It didn't breathe. No gasps, no quiver, no rhythm of a real kid crying. It was a loop and it was too clean. That's when I saw movement in the ditch. Two shapes uncurling from the mesquite, pale sleeves catching my headlights. They came slow, deliberate, staying low to the ground until the wind gusted, then breaking into that half-run people use when they're trying not to look like they're running. Both wore long shirts despite the heat, faces covered with painters' masks. The one on the left raised a hand, not to wave, but to test my sightline. The one on the right drifted behind my trailer tires. I didn't wait. I thumbed the bear spray clip to my belt and stepped back toward the cab. The first one said, "Ma'am, please, my kid's in there." We heard him screaming. His voice was normal, calm, trained. That's what really scared me. "Stay where you are," I said. "Highway patrol's en route." It was a lie, but lies can buy time. He hesitated, maybe trying to read how much of me believed it. Behind him, the call box screamed again. Same phrase, same pitch, same 30-second loop. The desert isn't quiet when you're panicking. Every cricket, every grain of sand sounds like it has teeth. I made it to the step, hit the handle, and climbed. The man lunged, fingertips grazing the door before it slammed. I twisted the locks and dropped the air brakes. As the truck lurched, something clanged against the back door. Metal on metal. A chain, or maybe a bar. The mirror caught two more figures pulling up in a gray Tacoma. No plates, headlights off. They'd been waiting deeper in the ditch. I floored it. The trailer fishtailed once before biting down. The call box still blinked behind me, pulsing like a heart monitor. The Bluetooth in the dash crackled. The child's voice again, this time whispering directly into the cab. "Don't leave me." I ripped the fuse. Static died. 5 minutes later, the DPS dispatcher finally came through, patchy but real. I gave coordinates, described the setup. She was quiet a long beat, then said, "Copy that. Stay rolling, Ms. Reed. We've got multiple similar 911 calls. Don't stop for anything." When the troopers found that stretch 2 hours later, the call box had been opened and gutted. Inside was a Bluetooth beacon, a solar battery, and a small speaker wired to a thumb drive. No phone line, no emergency service, just bait. 2 days later, I sat in a Tucson DPS substation, still shaking sand out of my boots while an investigator laid out photos. Same design, different counties, hacked call boxes, recorded pleas for help, and tire tracks leading to concealed camps in the washes. They called them the Sonoran Lure Crews. Groups of 3 to 5 who staged fake distress calls to draw truckers and tourists off the asphalt. Sometimes robbery, sometimes worse. The tech angle, the Bluetooth hijack, was new. They'd learned to piggyback a vehicle's own pairing system, so the voice seemed to come from inside your cab. Most victims stopped because that voice sounded close enough to real. I kept thinking about that tiny hand-sized speaker blinking in the call box, the way the men moved when the wind gusted, as if they'd practiced under its cover. The sergeant asked if I wanted to see the recovered equipment. I said no, some images you don't file, you delete. Back on the road a week later, I ran the same route. Same heat, same empty sky. But now every mile marker looked like a question and every call box like a mouth waiting to speak. When I pass one, I keep the dash cam rolling and the reefer hum steady. White noise that reminds me what's mechanical and what isn't. People always ask why I still drive nights after what happened. Truth is, the dark isn't the problem. The voices are. They know you're wired to help. They weaponize that decency. So now if I ever hear crying in the static, I don't stop. I call it in, mark the GPS, keep rolling, because the desert's full of echoes and not all of them are human. Lesson: the Sonoran knows your reflexes. Don't give it your keys. They call me Daryl Stitch Monroe because I can nurse a reefer back from a bad gasket with zip ties, aluminum tape, and a prayer. 26 years long haul. mostly odd lot freight between Vegas and the Snake River country. My office is a 2016 Cascadia with a 53-foot carrier vector on the pin, kept clean enough that customers think I have a fleet and not an overdrafted checking account. The desert north of Vegas has a way of ironing men flat. No trees, no mercy, and a night sky that looks like you're hauling under a black glass bowl. I picked up the load just off Cheyenne and 5th in North Las Vegas. A warehouse with no sign and a gate guard who didn't ask for small talk. Paperwork said medical research material. Maintain 38 degree 3.3 degree with a boldface line. Do not open cases. Do not interrupt temperature cycle. The forklift driver wore nitrile gloves like a nurse and moved the pallet jack with a care I appreciated. He also kept the Pelican cases turned so I couldn't read all the stickers. What I could see wasn't hospital. It was numbers, QR codes, and a triangle biohazard printed in a tone so faint it could pass for a brand logo unless you were looking. Hot rush, the dock man said. If you hit Alamo before 2, you're a hero. The dock smelled like disinfectant and lemon oil. No diesel, no pallets left to rot. That should have calmed me. It didn't. The shipper's signature was just a last name in boxy print. Chen, the consignee line, didn't list a street. Only GPS coordinates somewhere up US 93 past Hiko. I'd seen that kind of anonymized delivery on military jobs, not private research. I strapped the cases, dropped the temp to 38 degree F, watched the set point hold and rolled. NV318 after midnight is a ribbon through basalt and ghosts. The empty never ends. It just changes angle. The reefer hummed at 1700 RPM, steady as metronome. I checked my supply return every 15 minutes. A habit earned hauling vaccines during the year all of us learned to say supply chain like it was a cousin who never called. Outside Coyote Springs, I got the first hiccup. Set 38, return 40 with the compressor cycling a hair faster than it should. Not panic, desert night swing air density, but enough to make my fingers look for the carrier manual like a chaplain reaching for a hymnal. I eased shoulders off the wheel and listened. A reedy whine crept into the fan housing note, the kind you get when fins pack with grit or a belt starts to glaze. By Ash Springs, return 41. The air was thin as paper and the road heaved in long, slow breaths, the kind of thermal ripple that makes your eyes work overtime. I told myself to stop at Alamo Travel Center and get a flashlight into the cowling. The paperwork clock told me to hit the coordinates first, ask questions later, and let someone else worry about diagnostics on the other side of a signature. That's the tyrant out here, the scan gun. You chase the beep and forget the quiet. North of Hiko, the reefer ticked return 42. The indicator threw a yellow service icon, not red, not catastrophic, maybe pray now instead of already on fire. I pulled onto a wide turnout cut into caliche and shut down the tractor, leaving the unit cycling to keep its breath. The night stepped into the silence like a tall man through a tin door. Crickets, a coyote bark 2 draws over, and that deep desert hush that isn't quiet so much as absence. Pelican cases sweat when they're losing. I cracked the trailer and was met by a fist of air that smelled like cold metal and something sweet over copper. The cases glistened under the dome light. Condensation stood in beads on the handles. A strip of evidence tape on the lead case had lifted at the corner, adhesive curling like sunburned paint. That happens when you bring something too warm into the cold, or when the cold can't hold a line. I could have shut the door, logged the variants, and driven on into the coordinates like a dumb mule following salt. Instead, I set the chocks, killed the unit for 60 seconds to reset the controller, and told myself the same lie mechanics tell when the check engine light winks. We'll just have a look. Bolt cutters lived in the right-hand box, oiled and honest. The padlock surrendered with a snap I felt in my teeth. The lid lifted heavy. Inside was stainless nested in foam, frost smoke unrolling like a theater effect. The smell got louder. Not rot, surgical preservative, and a memory of blood. A canister labeled S34 sat in the middle like a crown in a moat of gel packs. I brushed frost and read the tiny print on a Tyvek tag. Thoracic 34A. My stomach went elevator drop. You do enough years around biology shipments and you learn the nouns. Thoracic doesn't mean seed bank or mouse study. It means chest. I cracked the can a 1/4 inch, enough to catch the profile without letting the cold dump. White skin gone gray with the freezer, sutures marching in perfect factory lines. I closed it before my brain recognized geography. Headlights drifted across the scrub beyond the turnout. Slow, patient, nosing along two-track like someone remembering a road that wasn't there. A black Suburban with no visible plate idled on the far side of the cattle fence parallel with my trailer. Lights down, engine ticking the way a big block does when it wants to talk but knows it shouldn't. My phone buzzed in my shirt pocket. Unknown. I didn't answer. A text popped. The photo that filled the screen wasn't art. My daughter, exiting her dorm in Boise, backpack slung. Timestamp 0043 second photo. My boy, Trent in a Nampa yard under a security light. Hands in pockets, timestamp 0041. No message under the images. None needed. The third text was just words, close the case. You'll be paid at Alamo. Don't be curious again. I stood in the trailer's breath with a hand on stainless and felt 26 years find a new shape. I closed the can. I reseated the foam. I set the padlock with a click that felt like losing. The Suburban glided forward until Mesquite hit it. The reefer controller beeped, then settled back to set 38, return 39 like it wanted to be trusted again. I wanted to be trusted again too. By who, I couldn't say. I shut the doors, broke the chalk dust from the tires, and pulled back onto 93. The desert swallowed my taillights without chewing. I drove in a world the length of my high beams and the width of the lane line, and every mile marker looked like a question. I didn't answer any out loud. The coordinates lived on a printed slip under the bill of lading. They pointed not to a lab with a lobby and a receptionist who smelled like coffee, but to a fenced rectangle of blockhouse sunk into badland a few miles off US 93. Chain link high, barbed wire angled, no signage. 2 towers built more for cameras than men. My truck's headlights bounced off cinder and made gray look wet. A keypad waited at the gate. I punched the code a dispatcher texted earlier, a sequence that started with the same 2 digits as my MC number. The gate rolled back without a buzz of welcome. Men in matching windbreakers stepped from a door cut into the block. Not lab coats, those tearaway nylon jackets you buy by the case when you plan to ruin a lot of them. One had boot covers on in the desert, which is an odd choice if your floor isn't the thing you're worried about contaminating. Monroe? The tall one asked, voice flat as uncut MDF. I nodded. He didn't ask for ID. He rattled off my plate numbers like he'd been looking at them through a scope for an hour. Dock 2. Dock 2 was just a weather-stripped hole with rubber guards and an air curtain whining like a tired air conditioner. I bumped the dock, set brakes, and hung the chocks, fingers clumsy. Loading dock protocol is a ritual. Open the doors, break the seal, cut the straps. Check the count, except this time the men moved before I did, gloved hands quick. Clipboards signed with letters, not names. They rolled the pelicans down with the kind of care you give religion. In the fringe of the light I saw candles, stubs on a steel shelf, wicks drowned in wax pools black as road tar. It could have been power outage prep. It didn't look like that. From deeper in the block came a sound I didn't want to call chanting. Too dramatic. Too much like the movies, but it had rhythm. And it came from voices that weren't talking about torque or temperature. It rose and fell with a meter that didn't care. I stood there with my hat in my hands. Sign here, the tall one said. The consignee line read, Receiver Continuity Research, in a font a lawyer might pick when he wanted to be harmless. I put my D. Monroe on the line, hand steady out of habit, heart anything but. The tall one gave me a manila envelope heavy with cash. Performance bonus, he said. You drive clean. We appreciate clean. In the corner by a stainless table were discarded seals cut and coiled like snakes. The Tyvek tags I'd seen in my trailer, white rectangles printed with tissue codes, were stacked in a tray with a spritz bottle of something clear parked on top. A man with shoulders like hangers and wrists like cables stood over an open case, moving tools in small circles like a violinist, tuning without making sound. He didn't look up. Question, I said, mouth surprising me. What's continuity research study? The tall one smiled with his mouth only. Continuity, he said. What outlasts men? I didn't ask a second question. There are doors you shut with your tongue. They finished the count. The tall one said, Alamo Fuel, lane 3, like he was blessing me to leave. The gate opened without a beep. The desert outside felt warmer, though the dash said 68 degrees at the Alamo stop. Lane 3 was open like a reservation. I rolled under the canopy and saw another Suburban, different plate, same shade, parked sideways across 3 regular stalls. A man in a polo leaned against my pump like it was his porch rail. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't have to. He handed me a white envelope thicker than the manila. Hundreds, crisp, turned the wrong direction for bank work, with a perfume of sanitizer and copper like money acquired in a room where gloves mattered. We appreciated your discretion. Mr. Monroe, he said, which was either a warning or a compliment, or both on a night when the stars felt like eyes. This number reaches us if your unit ever struggles again. He handed me a card with only digits, no logo, no lore. The area code didn't live in Nevada. I slid it into the dash cubby like it was a wasp I'd promised not to crush. Back in the cab, my ELD pinged a maintenance warning. Carrier fault code 261, compressor thermal. The controller had cleared the yellow triangle on its own to keep my blood pressure compliant. Machines lie as kindly as men when they think you need protecting from truth. On the way out of town, I passed a billboard that promised fresh peaches and a life I hadn't lived. The Suburban pulled onto 93 behind me, hung back 2 telephone poles, then peeled off onto a frontage road that ended in nothing. I watched him go in my mirror like you watch a wasp fly into a dark room and hope someone else is in there with a glass. The envelope rode the dash until Pahranagat turned silver under the low moon. My hands rode the wheel like they'd been hired to do only that. I kept imagining S-34 under a different light, in a different can, arriving in a room where candles smoked against cinder block and men wore boot covers to preserve something that didn't deserve preserving. That's the thing about imagination. It's a tool like a wrench, useful, heavy, and dangerous when your knuckles are cold. I parked outside Caliente and killed the dash. The desert breathed because I told it to, or maybe I just noticed it. I put the envelope on the bunk like a snake and sat on the floor like a man changing a tire inside his chest. I slept for 2 hours with my boots on. At first light, swallows scribbled on the air over the culvert like someone signing a check. I drank bad coffee and counted equations. Mortgage, injector said I'd been putting off, kids' tuition, the shape a conscience makes if you give it a number. By the time I hit Pioche, the math still came out to maybe. I drove home anyway. Some men tell their wives the truth after the danger passes. Some tell their wives the smoothed truth that fits into a morning. I told Sharon nothing the first day and everything the second. She listened like we were in church and I was the sermon. Not because she wanted to be, but because the room had decided. When I finished, she said, "You're going to the FBI. The way people say you're going to the doctor after a cough turns red." The Las Vegas field office has carpet that swallows boot sound and walls that pretend to be blank. The agent who took my statement had a file with tabs, colors, letters. She let me talk until my voice circled back. When I mentioned the blockhouse, she blinked because paper had just met picture. When I said the name Continuity Research, she didn't blink, which told me the name was new or not new at all. She asked for routes, timestamps, serials from the Tyvek tags I'd glimpsed. I gave her S-34 like a confession. "You did right," she said. She also said, "This is high risk, which meant we can't protect you from all the places you can be hurt." She told me I'd see unmarked traffic for a while and not to be excited about it. She told me to change routines. No same pumps on the same days, no predictable stops, no posting loads, no CB chatter that sounds like biography. She told me to call if anyone used the word discretion like a knife. 3 days after my report, news out of Lincoln County mentioned a structure fire near an unoccupied commercial facility. B-roll showed smoke walking sideways in the wind and a gate with a chain link curling where heat had taught it to kneel. "Electrical fault," the caption said. I turned the TV off because I wanted to believe and couldn't afford to. The agent called a week later. They'd hit 3 locations in 2 states, she said. Seizures, not raids, because paperwork likes softer nouns. The people in windbreakers had occupational licenses that dissolved when you breathed on them. The money in the envelope had markers on it even I could see when she waved a wand over a bill, and it glowed like a ghost saying present. Some men would face charges any prosecutor could say in public. Others had friends whose names live in rooms that don't have doors. "It will take time," she said. "It may not take them." I asked about S-34 because I'm an idiot who thinks numbers are less personal than names. She said, "We don't discuss specific item, which is government for the truth is too sharp to share or too soft to hold." She thanked me for my courage, which is what you say to a man who's about to drive away alone. The next night I got a dispatch ping from a broker I didn't know offering a hot partial out of Cheyenne Avenue, same pickup window, same temperature set point, pay twice the rate per mile and a bonus on delivery at coordinates I recognized even without checking. I typed decline, equipment unavailable, and turned my phone to airplane. 30 minutes later, a silver sedan with windows too black idled at the end of my cul-de-sac for 40 seconds and left like a man remembering he left the stove on. Here's what changed and what didn't. Still drive 93 318-6, the long empties that make the world big enough for a man's head. I still run reefer when the money says I should and flats when my back pretends to be 28. I keep my carrier maintained like a promise and my panic switch where my left hand rests without thinking. I don't take coordinate deliveries. If a consignee line doesn't have an address and a name that can blush, I don't put my miles under it. If a dock smells like lemon and copper and the men wear booties in the desert, I leave before anyone lets me in. I call the FBI when something smells wrong and DPS when a storm makes lies. I park under ugly lights and accept that the moths will be a tax. I don't open cases unless coolers fail, and then I record the sky in case the earth tries to forget. It took me a month to spend the envelope money, not because I wanted it to last, but because every bill felt like a question. Injector set, mortgage stub, Trent's textbooks, Sharon's broken molar. What the world costs doesn't care where your money comes from. That's the cruel math of men. If you want a moral, I don't have one that fits in a weeknight story. I have a sentence that tastes like honest metal. Some freight wants what you can't invoice. You don't know that until you touch it, and by then you've already put your fingerprints where candles make smoke marks that never quite wipe off. In Ely last winter, a young driver asked me at the counter if I'd ever hauled medical research and if the money was worth the paperwork headache. He had new boots creasing at the wrong places and a face that still believed road signs tell the truth. I said, "Son, you'll be offered work that pays what your soul is worth. The trick is to know the exchange rate before you sign." He laughed like I'd told a bar joke and bought my coffee. I drank it because it was warm, and because we are kind to each other on this road until someone teaches us not to be. He rolled out ahead of me into a dawn that made the Great Basin look like a dry ocean. I watched him go and told the wind that I meant every word. When return creeps offset now, I still pull over. I still cut a reset and let the carrier decide if it's going to be a friend today. I still open the doors if I have to. I never opened stainless. I never read Tyvek tags unless law tells me to, and even then I squint. The desert outlasts the names we give it. The men in windbreakers will be replaced by men in different jackets. The candles will be candles until someone calls them evidence. The road under US 93 will flex in heat and shiver in cold, and men like me will drive it at hours that make wives mumble in their sleep and children think we live in radios. If S-34 had a name, I don't want it. If continuity is a research topic, I hope it studies how to leave the living alone. When the heat blooms off the trailer door in a shimmer you can feel on your face, I remember the first time I mistook a wave of air for a hand. Now if I feel a hand, I ask myself who it belongs to before I invite it in. In the desert, some freight wants a soul more than a signature. The paper is clean either way. You're the only thing that won't be. They call me Big Nine because I've run I-9-something highways since before the ELD wars. I-90, I-94, US 93, take your pick. 31 years hauling heavy kit, machine tools, farm iron, anything that makes a forklift grunt. I drive a 2017 Freightliner Cascadia with a 72-inch sleeper, and more miles on the seat foam than most rental cars see in a lifetime. If it rolls and pays, I'll pull it. That September, I had 3 CNC beds chained and tarped on a step deck out of Phoenix for a shop outside Henderson, Nevada. I planned the run around the heat and tourists, leave Kingman after midnight, slip the rollers north on US 93, skirt the damn traffic, be waiting at the dock when the first coffee hits the shipping clerk's bloodstream. Night desert is honest. No rubberneckers, no RVs refusing the right lane, just owls and the odd patrol cruiser keeping count. It was 0241 when I cleared the Coyote Pass grade and flattened into that basalt swayback, where old lava looks like bad asphalt poured by God. The air was dry enough to make your tongue forget its job. My CB was easy company. 2 drivers swapping wheelbase lies southbound, a cattle hauler singing along to something twangy. Then the band did a thing CBs don't do politely, it stopped. Not faded, stopped, channel 19.921, every knob notch, dead. Like someone cut the night with felt, I tapped the mic anyway. Northbound 93 at mile 55, radio check. Nothing. No hiss, no snap. Just the sound of my own breath and the sleeper curtain whispering against the bunk as the road swam. The heat bloom on the pavement ahead started as a normal mirage, a flat river of silver that skates in front of your headlights until you drive through and it jumps forward to be the next lie. But this bloom held. It stretched across both lanes and the shoulder and didn't flinch when my beams hit it. I eased to 48 mph, watching the hood echo itself in that glass like I was hauling into a showroom. I was about to call it weird and drive through when I noticed taillights in the glass, not ahead of me on the real road, inside the reflection. 3 pairs, low and squared, forming a triangle. 1 center, 2 flanking, perfect convoy spacing like a drill team. I glanced in the actual mirrors. Nothing behind me but house dark and a road sign stuttering its own shadow. Glanced down at the glass ahead, there they were. 3 rigs in the reflection moving my speed, their marker lights dark, their shapes sharp in a way tricks of heat generally aren't. You spend enough time out here and your brain has a list of everyday explanations. Polished trailer sides can throw back lights. Slight crown can make weird angles. Someone could be pacing you in your blind spot. I tried them all. None stuck. My step deck was tarped, matte as a chalkboard. Nothing to reflect. The crown was gentle. The mirrors showed my world and my world alone. I toggled the radio again. Convoy northbound 93, identify. Dead blanket silence. My scanner, I keep one, spoke for NHP on a call 20 miles south, then went quiet like it was ashamed to have made a noise. The glass ahead brightened a fraction. Nothing changed in the air, but the mirage picked up more detail. I made out old-school noses, a cab over on the left, maybe an 80s Freightliner FLA, square as a brick. Center looked like a late 70s Kenworth with the flat grille and a bumper that had seen winters. Right truck could have been a white road boss. That hood had a way of slouching at speed. I know my silhouettes. The desert makes you a connoisseur of shapes if you want to stay out from under them. I slowed to 45. In the glass, the 3 slowed the same. I bumped 52. They matched. The triangle never changed. No headlight flare, no glint off stacks, no driver ghost moving in a windshield. Just mass, motion, discipline. The asphalt began to shimmer like a lake in a wind only I couldn't feel. My palms did the same. Between my trailer tires, heat came off in waves you could see like the air had ribs. I checked the load chains with my eyes. 4 binders per bed, flagging clean, and told myself out loud that mirages are physics, not ghosts. A grown man can lie to himself in a calm voice and make it almost work. At mile 63, the roadside crosses started. 2 white, 1 blue, shoved into weedy gravel in a cluster. The glass sharpened more like the world inside the mirage preferred shrines. The convoy drew closer by optical inches without touching math. If I drifted right, they drifted right. If I centered the lane, they trimmed like mine were their orders. I didn't brake. Braking for a mirage is how you make a physics problem into a truck problem. I nudged a lane change left. Nobody to cut off at 03 de Guar. Touched turn signal because I'm the kind of fool who signals to ghosts. And watched how the glass handled it. The triangle drifted left in perfect unison. Each truck's phantom tires kissing the crown of a road that wasn't there. That was when I admitted, not out loud, not to any microphone, the thing a night driver hates to say. Something was wrong that didn't belong to the tires, the road, or my head. It belonged to a place. I kept it between the lines and aimed at the next reflector post like it was a lighthouse. The air smelled like hot pennies and laundry, the way it does after brake smoke and long grades. Even though my temps were cool and I hadn't touched the pedal in 5 miles, I told myself I'd pull at Willow Beach turnoff, open gravel, space to breathe, and that whatever the glass wanted, it could have the empty lane. The clock ticked to 02:47. The CB stayed dead. And the convoy, in the glass only, not in my mirrors, not in the good world, paced me like brethren. I have never liked the time 02:47 since. US 93 slips into man-carved country north of Black Hills. Cuts blasted out of lava rock. Old alignments braided beside new. If you've run it long enough, you can still see bits of the elder road where the desert took back a shoulder and the state laid a straighter line. On the right, a fence 3 wires high marks cattle from Calamity. On the left, the Colorado is out there somewhere. A black ribbon sunken canyon, busy pretending it's tame. The mirage thickened into something else. Not water, not heat, a panel of night laid over night reflecting what wasn't. In that pain, the 3 trucks kept formation so tight it made my teeth hurt. Center rig tucked half a trailer back from the phantom of my bumper. Left and right flanked like a protective wedge you'd run in convoy country when bandits have radios and a sense of humor. I did another check. Mirrors clean. Dome light off dash dim to preserve night eyes. The thermometer on the outside mirror said 84 degrees. The glass ahead looked like January ice. I touched my high beams twice quick driver code for "you good?" The triangle didn't answer. The pane flashed white for a fraction like a camera shutter squeezed inside it, and I saw the left truck's grill pitted with gravel like it had eaten 1,000 winters in one night. Then the shine reset to lake. At mile 68, a rock cut rises, 2 black walls pinching the lane. The pane swallowed the cut hole. In the reflection, the road went straight through solid stone with the convoy sailing like it owned the mountain. In the real world, my headlights licked granite and came back honest. The triangle held line in their world and phased through in mine. I let out air I didn't know I'd been keeping. I tried the radio again, 19:922 back to 19, and got a sound like someone laying a wet towel over a speaker. The scanner chirped. Dispatch up near Dolan Springs rerouting a traffic unit for an intox. I keyed my mic anyway because habit is a religion. Any unit on 93 northbound at 68, you got a copy? I knew they didn't. I said it all the same. Sometimes you call into the dark so the dark knows you're not grocery. The pane brightened at the edges like moonlight behind thin cloud. I caught numbers on the door of the center truck, stenciled in block, half ripped, like someone painted over an old dot and did a bad job of forgetting. The first 2 digits were 19. The last might have been 85, could be a year, could be a coincidence. The mind loves patterns the way sand loves direction. The Willow Beach turnoff sign floated out of the mirage, green rectangle inside blue glass, then repeated in the real world a half-second later. I took the ramp lane and didn't. The shoulder on that spur is angled and narrow. You commit to it or you don't. If the pane was a mirror, I wondered, what happens when the world inside needs a decision you don't make? I held lane, hands light on the wheel because tight hands lie. The triangle in the glass signaled. I swear to you, the left and right trucks showed amber blink where their fenders should be. Not bright, not LED pop. Incandescent wink like old bulbs when the world had wires and patience. The center rig didn't blink. It held course through what, in their road, must have been a straight piece with no exit. That lane of theirs went forward while mine bent right. The amber wink could have meant hold the line. It could have meant good luck. We drove like that past the spur. Me in the hot world, them in their cold, and the pane kept borrowing my geography like it was renting by the mile. A jackrabbit darted in the real lane and I nudged right to give it a choice. In the pane, a shadow crossed the center truck's grill. Not my rabbit, something animal tall, long, and wrong for this county, like a deer cast at strange scale. My bumper didn't hit it because my bumper never met it. Their bumper did or didn't in a place my hands don't hold. At mile 72, a pullout offers gravel, trash cans, and a tired view. In my mirrors, the world stayed kind. No headlights, no chase. In the pane, the convoy's triangle tightened until each rig was a truck length from the other. A formation talk without voices, tighten up boys, we're going through. Through what, I couldn't say. The pane showed the pullout too and then refused to. It slid its own landscape over mine. A double yellow brittle weeds piled in wind lines. A sign on 2 posts I couldn't read because the paint had blown away before I was born. I flashed my hazards once and felt foolish. Who signals to a mirror that isn't one? The pane answered with nothing except a change in sound. Not through my ears, but through the steering wheel. A faint fuzz like a single bad bearing in a faraway wheel. It vibrated by language. I felt it more than heard it. I looked down at the hub temp display. Nominal. The fuzz lived in bone, not in steel. Then the pane broke. Not like glass shattering. Like someone lifted it up. One heartbeat it was there. The next it rose like a curtain, carrying the triangle of trucks up with it. Northward, eastward, elseward. Pick your adverb. And the highway was just highway again. The CB exhaled a hiss and coughed awake. Somebody northbound warned about a tire alligator at 74, and I laughed out loud because the living were back to naming things after animals that won't kill you. Here, the clock read 03:19. I hadn't blinked much in 32 minutes. Rolled the rest of the way to Henderson with music. Low and both windows cracked to air out something. My mind called ozone and my gut called church. The dock man tamped his stamp on my bills and didn't ask why I tipped him shaky. On the way back south, the road was day honest and every mirage had the decency to act like water again. I didn't say ghost. I didn't say hallucination. I said procession and let the word pick its own friends. 3 weeks later at the Kingman counter, eggs that pretend to be eggs, coffee that isn't but does the job. An older hand with coal miner knuckles talked about a thing his dad saw on US 6 back when men chained up for fun. Convoy ran dark behind him in a fog, he said. Never passed. When he took the turnout, they didn't. The waitress rolled her eyes like she keeps a shelf for such stories and keeps dusting it because men won't stop putting new ones there. I didn't tell mine. That's another thing time teaches. Not every witness is owed a hearing. Instead, I started collecting. Accident reports from the Valley paper. TOT stats, the kind of local archives church bulletins keep by accident. Over 30 years, the stretch between mile 55 and 74 had its share of heavy metal sadness. Jackknifes in monsoon spindrift. A peel-up during a dust devil day. One winter fog that punched 3 trucks into a guardrail like a fist into a loaf. In 2 separate incidents a long time ago, 3 rigs traveling together failed to make it home. I circled the dates, June 1985 and November 1991. Neither meant anything you could put on paperwork. Both meant more than I liked. I talked to NHP off the record. The trooper shrugged the shrug of a man who's heard everything twice. Heat's a liar, he said. Fog's worse. People get tunnel vision. They fix on taillights and follow them into nowhere. He didn't laugh me out of the office. He also didn't write me a citation for believing in pains. He slid a pamphlet across the desk about fatigue and told me to take it personally at a truck stop chapel, the kind with folding chairs and a cross made by someone who loved cedar, an old boy in a pearl snap. Asked if I'd ever felt accompanied when I shouldn't. He didn't use ghost either. He used company. Sometimes we're given it to warn us, he said. Sometimes we're given it because the dead want what we want, to be seen doing the job. I tried to diagram that sentence like a load plan. It failed on paper and worked in my chest. What changed? Small things. The kind that add up in a ledger you don't show dispatch. When the CB goes dead now, I don't call it weather first. I take inventory. Tire hum, hub heat, engine note, my own pulse. If one of those is lying, I fix the lie. If none are, I give the road room for the impossible the way you give a broken down pickup the shoulder. I don't brake for mirages. I don't drive through convoys and glass like I'm entitled to own lanes in every world. I let things pass me that aren't behind me. It doesn't cost fuel to be respectful. I run that stretch less by choice, more by market. Work takes you where money points. When I do, I hit 0230 with a full thermos, a clean windshield, and a prayer that sounds like patience. Past the roadside crosses, I click the hazard twice, not superstition, just a salute. If the pain rises, I narrate my lane like I'm teaching a new driver. Steady on the paint. Hands light. Look far. It's silly. It also keeps my brain busy while the part of me that knows how to be a mammal looks for mountain lions with headlights. Sometimes, when heat makes lakes and the CB dozes and the world gets thin, I see ghost shapes come back. Not full, not obedient. Just the idea of 3 rigs holding the triangle like a habit. They don't always show. When they do, it's at 2:47 more than not. I've reduced that to coincidence as many times as it will let me. It doesn't change the clock. I keep a photo in my visor. 3 men beside a 79 kW, sleeves cut, one with a perm that dates the sun. I don't know them. Picked it up at a swap meet in Quartzsite because the seller wanted $1 and didn't know the names. I taped it there so that when Glass tries to tell me stories, I can pick one that ends with people laughing about chain law and bad coffee instead of a pain lifting them out of the world. If you're asking for the moral, like folks do, I'll give you the one that doesn't ruin your breakfast. The road remembers. Concrete forgets as fast as budgets do, but the places, the cuts, the draws, the wind lines, keep books we don't. Sometimes those books open and a page lifts and the living see the dead going to work on time. Maybe it's science we don't have the math for. Maybe it's grief with good mileage. Either way, it kept me slow when fast was an option, and I'm not ashamed to owe my life to a thing I can't torque to spec. On clear nights, I still touch the mic at lonely miles. Northbound 93, I say. Big 9 passing the crosses, safe travels. Most times I get a cattle hauler or a hazmat whisper back. Once, just once, I swear I heard 3 quick clicks. Old school key taps without words. Could have been Skip. It could have been company. If you see them, cab over left, Old Kenworth Center, slouched white on the right. Don't chase. Hold lane. Let their world pass inside its mirror and give them the respect you'd want if your last mile kept looping without your consent. The desert is generous with sky and stingy with certainty. At OR 247, it can be both at once. Some convoys don't need asphalt. They need a witness. Name's Evan Dusty Calder. 24 years on the desert lanes, most of them across I-40 between Needles and Barstow, where the wind shears the paint off billboards and you can watch trains race heat mirages until both give up. I pull a 2019 Peterbilt 389 with a 53-foot dry van, spec'd with aluminum wheels, full TPMS on tractor and trailer, and a Bendix wingman I swear at but don't turn off. Nights out there are honest and mean. I like both traits in roads and people. It was early May, the week the sand turns from nuisance to habit. I'd cleared Kingman before midnight and hit Needles at 0120, topped off at the Chevron. Checked the steer 120-120, drives 100-102, trailer 95-98. Gauges were green across. I was light. Paper products out of Albuquerque, 28,000 on the box. So I planned to float the grade past Goffs and be rolling into Barstow by dawn. CB had the usual ghosts. Cattle haulers singing through the static. Some kid stomping carriers with a power mic. Nothing useful. Nothing ominous. That's the trick with the desert. Ominous comes dressed as normal and then asks for a ride. 10 minutes west of Needles, the TPMS pinged. Trailer 3. Right down from 96 to 90. Desert air swings. Sensors hiccup. I watched it, expected a bounce back. It didn't. 88, 84. A slow leak, not a blow. You can nurse a slow leak if you know the shoulder you'll choose. I eased to 55, kept right, felt for pull. The wheel was honest. The monitor was not lying. I keyed up. Westbound 40, Needles to Goffs, got a bleeder on a trailer tire, heads up if you're passing. That's when the white pickup appeared in my mirrors. No company logos. Amber beacon magnet mounted on the roof, wobbling like a toy. He tucked in tight on my right, where 3 right lives. Left hand on the wheel, right hand on my air dump. I watched him pace my damaged tire like a hawk living under etiquette. He honked twice, 2 polite pops, and waved me to the shoulder. With his other hand, he held up a flat fix can like a magician about to pull a rabbit. Policy says you don't trust roadside mechanics without dot numbers printed big as sin. Human reflex says a man who spots your trouble and offers a hand at OR 140 is worth a minute. The desert knows which voice wins more often. I clicked the indicator and let the rumble strip count circles under me. The pickup shot ahead and took the gravel apron just past a call box. He positioned like a legit service truck. Nose out for safety, cones ready. 2 more small things caught me. He had no reflective triangles and his safety vest was brand new. Stiff, square cut, no dirt where vests get dirty. People who work nights in sand carry their job on their clothes. His clothes carried a story he hadn't lived yet. I stopped far forward of him on purpose, so he had to walk to my door. A good man will walk to your door with his hands open. A bad man will want you to walk to him. He clipped toward me, all stitches and teeth. "Driver," he said, vest blazing in my headlights. "You're on the cord. You'll shred the sidewall if you keep it moving. I can cap it enough to limp you 5 miles to a shop. Better than calling a service and waiting 3 hours. Who you with?" I asked. He tapped his chest like he'd forgotten to pin a logo there. "Independent. Dispatch me through Needles PD sometimes. We listen scanners for stranded folks. Dot number? Lost the door magnet. It's in the cab." He half turned to gesture at his door. It was white, clean as a motel sheet, and wore no bolt holes where a magnet might have lived. He held that half turn just long enough for me to look away from the passenger side of my tractor, where the sleeper window wears a little blind spot. Something thumped my ICC bumper. Not hard, more a test than a hit. The truck shivered the way aluminum shivers when a body climbs it. A second thump underside of the van rear. You know how your rig sounds when teenagers walk the catwalk for a selfie? It was that, plus a little chain rattle. The man at my door saw none of that in my face because I gave him the look I give the road when I pretend to be slow at math. "Let me put my triangles and I'll come look," I said, voice easy. "Don't worry about triangles," he said. "My cones are out." "Ain't for them," I said. "They're for me." He didn't like that I had a ritual louder than his plan. He smiled, but only his teeth moved. I didn't set triangles. I dropped my trailer air, pulled the red knob, set tractor brakes, and clicked the lock on the glad hands. A cheap red cover I keep for yards where thieves wear vests. It wasn't thieves I feared right then. It was someone trying to pull my red line, dump my air, and make me a statue. "I'll meet you at the tire," I said through the window, and put the Pete back in gear without releasing the brakes. The truck rocked against its own hold like a bull scratching a post. The man's smile got shorter. Behind me, something scuffed fast under the trailer, like neon gravel, and then the pickup's amber beacon spun to life. Not for safety, for signal. I released the brakes and rolled. The pickup lunged for the lane to box me in front. I let him think he had me, watched the left shoulder widen where a grading project had left me a ribbon of room, and took it. My front steer kissed weeds and didn't flinch. The pickup swerved right for the same gambit, but couldn't commit without eating mile marker 1 and 29. I took the lane back and put diesel into the question. Behind me, the 3 right dropped from 78 to 65. Then 59, they'd opened the valve core while we talked. That's a valve cap scam I'd heard about, never met. A low-profile cap with a pin that bleeds when you push it half on. "You stop. They save you. You pay cash or worse." "Westbound 40, I said to nobody and everybody. "Possible scam crew at 129, 2 males, white pickup, no markings. They're not alone." I didn't look back again until Goff's Road. What I saw where I'd stopped wasn't cones. It was the impression of a body in the gravel, arms out, like a snow angel, only stone. I've seen a lot of outlines. Chalk at accidents, dust on hoods. I'd never seen an angel in rock. Maybe I imagined it. The desert lets you do that. It also lets you see exactly what you saw. I kept the hammer light and the eyes long. I'd limp a leak to Essex if I had to. I'd limp on rims before I'd limp into that man's shop. I took Essex Road and put the Peterbilt in the wide dirt just past the ramp, where the old gas station died 10 years back. The 3 right read 46 and falling. I carry a 12-volt air pig for emergencies and a kit of cores, caps, plugs that saved me more hours than therapy. I grabbed the plug kit, threw on a headlamp, and slid under the skirt. The boys on my bumper had been quick. I'll give them that. The valve cap wore fingerprints they didn't bother to wipe. It was a bleeder cap, cheap brass with a spring and a shaved stem. I spun it off, fished a new core from my pocket, and swapped it, listening for the sweet hiss of air returning to a system that had been asked to give up. The tire held a grudge but came with me to 62. Not road happy, but good enough to Barstow if I watched my turns and my temper. That's when a service truck rolled up. White box. Ladder racks, 24/7 mobile tire, stenciled in vinyl that still creased from the backing. 2 men in vests climbed down as if called by angels. The driver had a tablet. The helper had forearms like he carried engines. "We got a dispatch," the tablet man said, showing me a blank screen. "You stopped at Essex with a trailer leak." "Funny," I said, not laughing. "I didn't dispatch anyone." He gave me a smile measured in millimeters. "Hate to see a driver stranded," he said. "We got a bay close by. 5 minutes west. We can throw you a used casing, cheap." I looked at his tires. New Hankooks. I looked at his hands. Clean nails. I looked at his eyes. Wrong smile. "What's your bay address?" I asked. "Right off Goff's, behind the aggregate quarry. Locals know it. We'll lead you. Behind quarry in the desert means nobody will hear you until morning." I shook my head. "I'll nurse it." He lifted his tablet like he was about to take my temperature with it. "We sign you blind, you roll behind us 30 minutes, and you're safe. Otherwise, you might shred your rim. CHP hates that. CHP hates a lot of things. They don't hate my rims. They hate scenes." I kept my voice soft. "I've got my own kit and a compressor. I'll be fine." The helper stepped a half pace closer like he'd been signaled. I stepped a full pace back because I have lived 2 decades longer than men who step forward during certain conversations. The helper raised both hands, harmless, while his eyes measured whether the catwalk was climbable and whether I was the kind of man who checks his 5th wheel with a bat. "Suit yourself," the driver said. "We'll wait till you roll, safety." They didn't leave. They parked nose out, high idle, doors open, headlights off. In the white box, something clinked when the wind moved. The sound chain makes when it's touching a hook. Across the road, the quarry's dredge belt sat black against the darker sky. Somebody had pushed dunes into berms months ago and the wind stapled them in place. The sand there was thin over river rock. Good for impressions. Good for angels. I worked slow all over sudden. Slowness is a language scammers can't parse. They like panic and speed and thumbs. I cleaned the puncture, ran a rasp, pushed a mushroom plug till my shoulder whined, trimmed the stem, and gave the pig 2 more minutes of hum. 78 psi, then 82. The helper watched my hands like children watch a gift being wrapped. He wasn't interested in learning. He wanted to know when his part would start. It started when I put my tools away without looking at them and said, "I'll be rolling," at a tone I use for drivers I like. The tablet man nodded, then flicked his eyes left, signal. The helper brought his right hand up from below his vest. No gun, valve core tool. He meant to dump my red line the second I released the brakes. Old trick, your spring brakes release. Your service bleeds, you lose reservoir. Your tractor protection closes. And you're a park ornament with 80 feet of embarrassment and 2 men who now control your timeline. I had set a glad hand lock because paranoia is lighter than chrome. When the helper went for the red, the cap laughed at him, soft metal on hard plastic, and his face gave me a clean read on plan B. He went for the blue. I had capped that too. He ducked under toward the service tap on the trailer. I hit the air horn because noise is a tool I will not apologize for using. The service truck flinched. The helper jumped. The tablet man lowered the tablet because his priority had changed to eyes. I released brakes, dropped the clutch, and pulled. The Peterbilt stepped like a horse who knows you want it, and the trailer followed because physics likes work and I pay it on time. The helper grabbed nothing and fell in gravels. His spine left a crease a chiropractor would write poems about. The tablet man dove into the cab of his box and watched me go with a face that said, "Not tonight." In the mirror, as I took the ramp back to I-40, my headlamp caught the edge of the quarry and the berm. It held impressions, large, small, too many, like a beach nobody swims. Arms out, legs together. A dozen gravel angels overlapping, some fresh, some softened, some with drag marks where wind erased what men had written. Maybe they were the shapes of men who'd laid down to work under a trailer. Maybe they were something else. I hit Goffs and dialed 911 because sometimes courtesy is law with a gun. The dispatcher's voice had seen this before. "Describe the box truck," she said. I did. "Stay rolling," she said. "Units en route. We've had reports." She didn't say of what. At Ludlow, I bought air for the pig I'd borrowed from myself and coffee I didn't drink. A CHP cruiser idled in the lot. I parked under the ugly lights and wrote a statement with hands that spelled worse than they drive. "Valve cap bleeder scam," the officer said without a question mark. "Quarry behind Goffs? That their bay?" "Not a bay," I said. "To stage." He nodded like the word tasted truer than his paperwork would allow. "You did good not laying out," he said. "Most lay out when a man points at their problem. Problem gets bigger while they do." I gave my report to CHP Needles at 0410 and another to San Bernardino County Sheriff at 0930. After I slept 3 hours against the reefer hum at Barstow, like a child that doesn't want to be alone. The deputy looked 40 with 50 in his eyes and knew every tow yard from Daggett to Newberry Springs by first name. He put a map on the table, paper, not screen, and turned it so the quarry near Goffs faced me like a wound. "We call that area the Boneyard," he said. "Used to be a legal pit. Now it's a stage for thieves or worse, depending who leases the night. We've chased bleeder crews out there twice this month. They ghost when we light them up, then set again when the wind erases footprints. What about," I started. I didn't want to say angels. He didn't make me. "We see impressions," he said. "Sometimes from guys lying down to pull lines. Sometimes from folks who get zip-tied when they refuse to play. You'd be surprised how many grown men will do what they're told if you speak in shop language." He paused. "We don't have all the bodies that fit those outlines. We do have 2 that did." I tasted iron even though my mouth was clean. "Names?" He shook his head. "Not for secrecy, for mercy. Families don't need them in stories they didn't write." The deputy slid over a valve cap in an evidence bag. The same cheap brass, same shaved stem. "We picked these up by the 1-pound coffee can," he said. "Some crews use them to steer you into a shop. Some use them to time your hopelessness while they walk your bumper. Some are just idiots playing tow truck with a chain and a prayer. The chain ones are the dangerous ones. They'll hook your ICC. They'll drag your rear into their bay, and if you pull, they'll say you damaged their equipment and quote you something between cash and your truck." He asked if I'd drive him out for a look. We rolled in his Tahoe while the sun did the mercy thing it does after bad nights. Pretend nothing bad ever happens and coax your body back into being a body. The quarry looked like God scraped a fingernail across a countertop and left it to blow. Near the berm we found tracks, pickup tires, box truck twin rears, prints that said 2 men jumped out fast and 1 fell. We found no cones. We found no triangles. We found a crush line in the gravel where my trailer had flexed when I pulled, and the helper learned about gravity. We found angels, fresh and half-winded, spread across 20 feet of leveled dust. Arms out, heels together, some with zip-tie zipper marks near the wrists. I didn't point. He didn't either. The wind working the surface made everything look like breath that wouldn't stop. Back at the station, he gave me a paper with 3 bullet points he said I could keep. Never stop where someone points at your truck. Choose your shoulder and own it. Lock your lines. A $12 Glad Hand cap saves $12,000 worth of trouble. Shop behind the quarry is not a shop. It's a stage. I drove the 389 home to Hesperia on a new casing I paid for in a place with receipts and bolt holes on the wall where a business used to be a different business 20 years ago. Sharon asked if I was late because of weather. I said wind and let the rest wait until coffee had hands to hold. For a week, my dreams made gravel angels in the ribbed dirt behind my eyelids. In the morning, I'd brush grit off my tongue that wasn't there. I kept the evidence bag cap the deputy let me keep. I set it on my dash like a medal and a caution. Here's what changed and what didn't. I still run I-40 at night, Needles to Barstow, because work is work and the BNSF doesn't stop because I got nervous. I still stop when people need help. I just set my scene, not theirs. I still carry plugs and cores and a 12-volt pig because I am arrogant enough to think I can fix what breaks and smart enough to know sometimes I can't. If a pickup with an amber magnet paces my bad tire now, I keep rolling to a lit ramp or a lot with cameras. If a man says shop behind the quarry, I say CHP behind me, and I don't wait to see if I meant it. If my TPMS blinks, I watch the road, not the beeps. If I see angels in the gravel again, I won't call them that. I'll call them warnings. You want a neat ending like radio shows give? There isn't one. A week after my night at 129, CHP popped a box truck near Essex with a lift, chains, bleeder caps, and a pistol under the seat. Misdemeanors, they said, and maybe grand theft if a victim could ID them. The desert is good at erasing details and keeping outlines. 2 nights later, a rookie out of Barstow messaged me a grainy dash cam still. It showed a white pickup tucked tight against a trailer tire, beacon off, driver's arm out like he was pointing at a miracle only he could see. The rookie wrote, "We lit them up. They scattered. Thanks for the heads up." I deleted the message because I don't collect souvenirs from bad luck I didn't earn. Somewhere, wind is making new angels in new gravel, and men in vests without stains are practicing their smiles in rearview mirrors. The road will stay honest and mean. The mean is not always the road's fault. When I pass mile 129 now, I click my hazards twice. Not for them. For the men who saw a problem, pointed at it, and hoped I'd let them finish their rehearsal. I won't be their stage. I'll be moving with my Glad Hand caps on and my left hand where it belongs. Midnight kindness can be rehearsed. Choose your stage or someone will choose it for you. They call me Cole Maddox, owner-op. 28 years on the desert lanes from El Centro to Casa Grande. I pull a 2020 Kenworth T680 with a 53 OE dry van, mid-roof, Bendix wingman, TPMS on all 10, and a dash cam front eye rear I treat like insurance with a memory. My lanes are night lanes. I like the way the desert trims noise down to engine note and tire hum. Trouble hears that quiet too. I left Yuma just after midnight with 38,000 lb of copper wire spooled on skids. Legit. Serialized. The kind of load that makes crews salivate and insurers frown. Broker paid a premium on account of recent incidents. He said that's soft. My route was simple. I-8 East, AZ-85 North at Gila Bend. Cut over to a warehouse outside Buckeye for a Dero 7 Tosaro live unload. No mountains, no snow. Nothing but heat that lingers in the asphalt like a bad idea. The Arizona POE scale at MP2 in Yuma keeps bankers hours. Nights you rely on WIM plates, weight and motion sensors buried in the road, and the portable operations DPS runs when they feel like reminding us we're not alone. We all know the rhythm. When real inspection sites pop, they show up on the permits app. They have marked cars, generator floodlights, aero boards, and the smell of coffee nobody had time to enjoy. Past Dateland, the CB was healthy. 2 reefers swap recipes for keeping lettuce crisp. A cattle hauler muttering about crosswinds. Then at 0247 the band went dead. Not the polite fade when folks peel off, dead. Scanner still chattered for DPS District 7, so I knew my radio wasn't the one that died. 3 miles short of Gila Bend, an aero board bloomed out of the heat. Open, all trucks exit in amber chevrons. Past it, a line of orange drums and retro-reflective cones narrowed the right lane toward the off-ramp. My headlights picked out a big lit sign on the frontage road. Commercial vehicle inspection. I could see a couple of canopies. A light tower throwing sodium glare and 3 white Tahoes nosed out like government. I tapped the app. No notice. That wasn't unheard of. Surge teams can be spontaneous, but the details tickled wrong. The aero board strobed out of sync. The cones weren't sandbagged, and the Tahoes wore magnetic visor lights instead of bars. The generator sounded wrong, too. More lawn party than state contract. Out of the corner of my eye, the canopies looked new, not baked. The vests glowed too clean, and the inspection banner was zip-tied to PVC like a tailgate. I keyed the CB anyway. Eastbound 8 at Gila Bend, anyone got eyes on a night POE? Silence, then a whisper I almost missed. Negative. Don't exit. The carrier stomp resumed and buried it. On the shoulder sat a flatbed nailed with portable WIM pads, bluish tiles with cables snaked across the lane. That looked official at 10 feet and weird at 30. I eased down to 35, kept left, hazard flashers on a slow bleed. A man in a Class 3 vest stepped out, palm up, wand in his other hand like a maestro. He didn't point at my plate or permit. He pointed at me. Driver, he mouthed. Scale. He had the voice of somebody used to being obeyed and the posture of somebody who'd practiced looking official in a motel mirror. I watched his boots, no scuffs. I watched his pistol belt. Empty, just a holster with no gun and a radio that didn't ping. His eyes moved past my face to my mirror like he was waiting for something behind me to finish its mark. In my mirror, a box truck eased out of the dark behind my trailer. No markings, twin rears, side door. He stopped 30 feet back and held, lights off like a cuttlefish. I put the KW into manual, picked third, and let the X15 row a little torque. The inspector stepped further into my lane and slapped the side of his thigh like he was calling a dog. My ELD panic sits where my left hand rests without thinking. I pressed it. Somewhere my dot turned red for dispatch, DPS, and one number my wife and I picked on a calm day. The false POE got closer. Canopies fronted by tables with clipboards and a portable printer like they meant to write citations and receipts. Under the canopy, a barricade cabinet sat open to show flares and triangles like a prop. To the left, half in shadow, a black Suburban idled with its hatch up and a bolt cutter silhouette glued to the carpeted lid. I didn't brake. I drifted left, slow and obvious, as if a confused driver at night might mistake an invitation for a suggestion. The man in the vest keyed his shoulder mic and nodded. Signal received, and the box truck behind me rolled forward to tighten the box. Left shoulder narrowed, right side stacked with drums. Up ahead, a row of officers waited with flashlights set to blind. It looked like an inspection. It smelled like ambush. I rolled the window down and spoke where dashcam could hear. I am not exiting. If DPS requires me, they can take the lane. I'll stop on the interstate, not for them. For the record. The wand man's smile shrank until it had no teeth. He shouted something I couldn't hear and did a hand motion that isn't in any traffic manual. The box truck closed to within 10 feet of my ICC, too close for safety, exactly right for fear. Then, out of the night, a real NHP charger came hot from the median with bar lights that don't need permission, and a voice that carries, "Truck 1 eastbound, keep lane. Do not exit, units en route." Everything on that frontage road stalled one heartbeat. The box truck backed off. The wand man pivoted like someone had tugged his string. The canopies went dark in a cascade. Generator yanked, plugs pulled, illusion collapsing into carport bones. The Tahoes rolled. The drums fell sideways in the wash of their panic. Kept my wheel center and listened. To my pulse decided it wanted to stay. The fake way station, folded like a carnival tent in a wind everyone could finally feel. I passed the off-ramp and the last cone bounced, under my steer like a cheap lie. Behind me, the charger ate shoulder and took the ramp like an apology with a badge. I breathed when my hands forgot not to. I've crossed scales in 6 states that could weigh your soul if you let them. This wasn't one. TPS had me keep 55 and talk. The trooper's voice rode the scanner and the CB, both now alive as if the night had changed its mind. 2 units inbound, rolling block 1 mile ahead. I repeated what I'd seen, the PVC banner, the portable pads, the empty holster, the box truck nursing my ICC like a tick. He said copy all, like it wasn't his first rehearsal watching a show fall apart when the lights got real. For 2 miles, nothing. Then something. Headlight slid into my right mirror, steady and low, and kept station at my rear axle. Pickup with ladder rack. On my left, a Sprinter van in matte gray crept to the blind where convex mirrors work until they don't. A second box truck, smaller than the first, floated in the gap the Charger's absence had left. Classic 3-car grinder. Right force feints, left force pins, rear force pressures. Front force, if they have it, appears as an official to puncture your decision with authority. I dropped to manual again to take the wind out of their timing. The ladder rack pickup drifted into my shadow, then surged to tempt me right. The Sprinter bled leftward until his mirror threatened mine. The rear box nudged close enough I could count his bug splats. The rolling block showed up as blue strobe on the horizon. My TPMS chimed. Trailer 1 left dropped from 92 to 86 like somebody had kissed the valve with a bleeder cap at the fake POE drive-thru. I felt no pull yet, but the readout told me the next 15 minutes of my life were going to share a bed with a compressor. The pickup tried for contact, a brush and hook maneuver to clip my mud flap hanger and make me feel hit so I'd stop. I cheated right toward the fog line and gave him nothing but a stripe. He took nothing expertly and tried again. My left mirror filled with matte gray. The Sprinter held exactly where a driver hates a vehicle to live. I touched the air horn once, voice without words. Driver, the trooper said, 1 mile to block. Keep lane. He said driver like a shield. The leak hit 80 and held. Compressor kicked and cycled. My air dryer spit. The box truck behind tried the high beam wash, a trick that makes some men flinch and some men aim. I aimed. The KW's wheel was easy in my hands the way a heavy door is easy when you remember it's hinged. The rolling block widened. A Charger and a Tahoe took both lanes half a mile ahead and bled speed so everything behind them had to bleed too. When the Sprinter saw the pinch, he backed out like a man who'd promised his mother he'd be careful. The pickup tried to cut right and found rumble strip in the end of his nerve. The box truck committed to a last squeeze, then found himself out of business when the Tahoe laid in and showed him what marked looks like. We coasted to 35 in a sea of government. I watched the box truck nose to the shoulder like a dog with something it shouldn't have. The trooper told me, maintain. Don't stop until my unit is on your bumper. I did, he was. We took the AZ-85 split in a blue cocoon. At the chevron just past the junction, he stacked me under ugly lights and let the world grow witnesses. The trailer leak read 76. He watched me set chocks, watched me cap the valve with a clean core, watched the mushroom plug go home into a small puncture I hadn't earned. He photographed the TPMS screen and then my rear camera frame by frame. The footage caught the wand man's face. It caught portable pads and PVC. It caught the box truck's front plate and the moment the fake POE turned to origami. He called for another unit to run the frontage road. He called the county to send a tow with a chain, not meant for theft to clear the cones the thieves had left like breadcrumbs. He called a sergeant who sounded like he'd been warned about night way stations enough that he needed a punch card for overtime. While we stood there letting the compressor earn its keep, a reefer swung in wide and parked 2 bays over. The driver rolled down and said, "You saw it too?" He had Boise plates and equal parts fear and anger in his mouth. He said a man in a vest had tried to flag him down at the off-ramp, then changed his mind when he saw blue. He said he'd been hit by something like it 2 months ago near Picacho Peak. Same setup, different banner, same box truck shadowing his ICC. He hadn't reported it because he didn't have footage. He was reporting it now. That's how patterns get names. Back on the scanner, I heard the units hit the frontage road and call out, "Dark site, possible suspects fleeing." Collecting props in the grammar cops use when they're putting a story away without making it immortal. The trooper looked at my copper manifest and then at me. They weren't inspecting, he said. They were shopping. The leak climbed back to 90 and settled. The desert exhaled dust and the occasional moth. I signed a statement because paper is where nights go so they don't have to live in your throat. Roll when ready. he said. We'll shadow to Buckeye. I slept under the solar farm that afternoon and dreamed about arrow boards lying down in the sand like men who'd finally been told to stop. The next week, I sat in a DPS substation outside Goodyear, coffee gone to mud in a cup with a badge on it, while an investigator with hands like road maps walked me through stills culled from a half-dozen dash cams that weren't mine. He had folders, real paper, not just cloud, and a map of I-8, I-10, and US 60 with pushpins where the fake inspection sites had been reported. Gila Bend, Marana, Tonopah, pins clustered near industrial yards that accept copper, farm diesel, and regret. He explained the mechanics. You stage a convincing facade just off an off-ramp. Cones, canopy, arrow board, a POE banner. You coordinate spotters farther back to pace targets and bleed valves with caps. You use Bluetooth repeaters to clip CB range, and you count on driver's instinct to comply when a vest points and a sign glows. Once you divert to the frontage, you're boxed, your dash cam glared out, and your doors get cut while a citation distracts you. If you play along, they find an axle overweight and escort you to a way bay behind warehouses. That is where cargo disappears and sometimes people get hurt. Why copper? I asked. Because palletized copper pays before sunrise, he said. And because every hungry yard has someone who looks the other way for a cut. He said cut like he wanted to spit after. They'd hit a staging lot 2 nights after my run. PVC banners. Drums, cheap generator. Borrowed arrow board with a sticker from a legit rental company filed off with laziness. They'd found bleeder caps by the handful and 2 portable WIM pads that were actually rugs with aluminum tape. If you know scales, you'd laugh. If you're tired at 2:47, you'd squint and obey. The investigator slid over a still. The wand man I'd seen now in full light, jawline, ears, a tattoo peeking from the glove cuff. Former yard hand, he said. Fired last year. He knows our language but not our rules. Another photo. The box truck and plate matched a shell company that closed 3 months ago with taxes owed to people who always get paid. A third photo. A Suburban with the hatch up and bolt cutters taped to the lid like a belt of trophies. They were not subtle, he said. Just fast. He asked if I wanted a copy of my ELD event, the panic ping that moved the cavalry. I said yes. He printed it like a birth certificate. He told me to keep running and to report anything that smells like PVC wearing a badge. Then he handed me a 1-page. Bullet points he said they'd started giving every driver who walked in with a story that sounded like mine. Real night ops appear in the permits app and have marked units on the interstate. Not hidden on frontage. Arrow boards run with sandbagged drums and traffic control plans. Not PVC zip ties and party generators. Inspectors don't ask for cash. They don't escort you off-site to reweigh. If CB goes dead and the night grows helpful, call DPS and keep lane, he said. You'd be shocked how many drivers apologize to us for not stopping for a fake cop. I told him there are 100 ways to teach a dog to heel. We were taught by tickets and holy fear. 2 months later, a press release, short on nouns and long on verbs, said a multi-agency task force had arrested 6 men in connection with commercial vehicle diversion schemes. They showed the props on a table. Arrow boards, cones, bleeder caps, mock badges, a clipboard with citation templates that spelled axle wrong. They didn't show faces. They didn't mention copper. They never do when they still have holes to plug. Here's what changed in me. I still run I-8 at night. I still like the loneliness and the way the stars pretend they understand freight. I still stop when law says stop. But law comes with light bars and high-vis that's dirty, and it owns the lane. If somebody tells me all trucks exit with a banner that flaps like laundry, I don't. I call DPS. I let them decide whether the road belongs to them or to a stagehand. I mounted a rear-facing cam under the ICC with its own battery and SD card in a box I pop daily. I put glad hand locks on both lines so nobody makes me a statue with a smile. I keep bleeder caps in a bag on the dash so I remember the cheapness of the tools men use when they can't earn what they want. I move the panic to where my palm lives. I trained myself to say out loud, I will stop on the interstate. You can come to me, you want the neat moral. I don't have one. The desert doesn't run morals. It runs scripts. Some scripts are written by engineers and troopers and people who want you alive at breakfast. Some are written by crews who think arrow boards are theater lights. Your job is to know which show you're walking into before the cones steal your lane. Last week, just past Gila Bend, I watched a real nighttime operation own the highway. Marked units sat on the shoulder. Troopers waved, not pointed. The permits app pinged before my eyes saw light. I took the lane they told me. They weighed me in motion with gear that had serial numbers and paperwork. The inspector's vest was faded where the sun eats devotion, and his belt had a gun that wasn't a rumor. He glanced at my copper seals, stamped my paper, and said, "Safe travels, driver." I rolled. In the mirror, the real lights bathed the real cones, and the night looked like work, not a trap pretending to be it. If you see all trucks exit at 0247 next to canopies that look like tailgates, don't be polite. Be professional. Keep lane, call it in. If it's real, they'll make you honest. If it's not, you just wrote yourself a better ending than a banner would have given you. In the desert, some scales weigh freight. Some weigh your judgment. Pass the right one.